Moed Katan Daf Chavches is the last full daf in Maseches Moed Katan and contains one Mishnah, the final Mishnah in the Masechta. The daf is very long. It contains a lot of agadata about different types of death, passing from the world, what it feels like to die. It records incidents of Samir Chachamim who met the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, how some of them were able to push him off, the interactions with him. It does contain a few halachos along the way, and it talks a little bit about Miriam. It also describes various different phrases that were used in his spadim for individuals in certain places. So the Gemara begins by quoting the Mishnah, where we had seen that when we take a woman out to Kvura, we do not stop and rest her in the middle of the street. It's not covered for the woman. So Gemara has a machakas as to whom that applies. According to the first opinion, that applies only to a woman who has just given birth, because there will be blood stains or possibly still be blood flowing from the body, and that's a disgrace for her. According to Rav Elazar, it applies to all women, and it's learned from the pasuk describing the death of Miriam. It says Vatamas Sham and Miriam died there, Vatigavar Sham. So we see that she was buried in the same spot in which she died. We did not want to carry her and stop her in other places, because it's not covered for a woman to have that happen. Now the Gemara has a bit more agadata about the death of Miriam. Gemara says that Rav Elazar also says that Miriam was one of the 6 people who passed away in what's called neshika, that is a kiss from God. That is a close and simple transfer from this world to the next world. The Gemara says that it's derived from the word Sham. Like we said, it says V'tamas Sham in Miriam. It also says Vayamas Sham Moshe. Just like Moshe died with a kiss from God, Miriam also did. Now we know that Moshe did, as the Gemara elsewhere derives from the fact that it says Al Pi Hashem, by the mouth of God, is how he died. It doesn't say that by Miriam, because it would not be covered to use an expression like that for Miriam. However, it is indirectly hinted by the fact that it says the word Sham there. Okay, now the Gemara goes further. The Gemara says that Rav Ami says, why is the death of Miriam listed next to the Parsha of Paraduma? To say, just like the Paraduma is Micha Peres, it brings atonement for sins, so too the death of Tzadikim also brings atonement for the rest of Klal Yisrael. Rav Elazar says, why is the death of Aaron listed next to the description of the Big Day Kahuna? To show you, just as the Big Day Kahuna bring a kapara for Klal Yisrael, the death of Tzadikim, same point, also bring kapara for Klal Yisrael. Now the Gemara has a brisa which lists a number of different types of way one can leave the world, and this shows that leaving the world without prior warning seems to be an indication of a punishment or upsetness from Hashem. But if one has enough warning, then that is normal, and the more warning one has, the better off one seems to be. So the Gemara says one who has no warning is what's called Meis Pisom. The Gemara describes that as Misa Chatufa. It's called grabbed. He's snatched from the world. If he had a 1-day warning, that means he was ill for at least 1 day. That's called Misa Dechufa. He's pushed. Tosfos wonders what the difference is, what the name is. And Hanani ben Gamliel says that has a different name. It's called Misa through a Magifa. It's called the death of a plague, and that's derived from the pasuk in Yecheskel describing when his wife was taken from him. Over there it says, Ben Adam Hinini Lokech Mimcha Esmach Menecha. Hashem says, Son of man, I'm going to take from you the treasure of your eyes. Ba Magifa. There is the word Magifa in a plague. V'lo Sispelo Sifka V'lo Savo Dim Lasecha. You cannot do eulogies, you can't cry, and you may not have tears. And then Yecheskel says, and I spoke to the people in the morning, and then my wife died in the evening, and I did in the morning as I was commanded. So you see, she died the next day, and that's 1-day warning, and that's called the death of a Magefa. Okay, now the Gemara goes on, and it says that there's a type of the death that happens after 2 days warning, that's called a Misa Dechuya, that's rushed from the world. 3 days warning, 3 days of illness is called Ga'ara, that's with being yelled at from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were. 4 days is called Nazifa, that's called being scorned or scolded. 5 days is normal. A normal Misa has at least 5 days of illness before it, as a warning that a person's about to leave the world. Now the Gemara says, what is the source that 5 days is the normal Misa? The Gemara says, you find that by Moshe, there was 5 days, because it says, Hein Karvi Yamecha Lamos. Hein is 1. The Gemara says, Hein is 1 because in Greek, the word for 1 is Hein. And it says, Karvu, plural, they are drawing near. And Yamecha, plural, your days, 2 plurals, 2. That's each one is a minimum of 2, is a total of 4, plus Hein is 5. So that's 5 days. Now the Gemara speaks about how many years old one is. So the Gemara says if one is 50 years old, that is kares. That is the punishment of being kares, being cut off from this world, which includes a premature death as well as other things that happened afterwards. 52 years old, that's how old Shmuel Hanavi was when he died. The Gemara calls him Shmuel HaRamasi, he was from Ramah. He died at 52 so as not to see the downfall of Shaul and things that happened afterwards, but not as a punishment, but that is how old he was. Now, under 60 years old is called Misa B'dei Shemayim. It's not kares, but it is a premature death. And the source for that is from the pasuk in Eov, which says Tavel B'kelach Elai Kevar, that one will come maturely to the grave. Kelach is Gematria 60, Ba'kelach is Gematria 60, Beis Chaf Lamed Ches, 2, 20, 30, and 8. So that is to show that that is the correct maturity of the death. Now, if somebody lives to be 70, that's called Seva, that's called old age. That's a full age. If somebody lives to 80, that's already Gvurus, that's already strength. As the pasuk in Tehillim says, Yemei Sheneseinu Behem, the days of our years on this world are Shivim Shana, 70 years in Gvurus, and with strength, and then we get to 80 years. Now the Gemara says that Rabbi's opinion is that from 50 to 60 is also called kares, meaning from 50 years old to 60 years old, that's what kares is. Now the reason why we don't mention that specifically that that's kares is because Shmuel was 52, so Shmuel was in that time zone, and it would be disrespectful to Shmuel Hanavi to say that that time zone is kares, even though Shmuel himself did not die because of kares. Now the Gemara records that when Rav Yosef was 60 years old, on his 60th birthday, he made a party, he made a Yom HaTavel or Rabbanon, and he said, because now I know that I'm not going to get kares because I've gotten out of, it's got to be under 60 for it to be kares. Now Abaye said you didn't have a kares of years, but you still may have kares of days. That is, you still may die without warning. That's what we called before Misa Chatufa. The Gemara is now saying that that's also a type of kares. So Rav Yosef said, look, I may have gotten out of only one type of kares, but it's worthwhile to make a celebration even for that. 1 out of 2 is also good. The Gemara records that Rav Huna died suddenly, and the Chachamim were worried. Maybe that was a sign that he had kares. The pair of Talmidei Chachamim came from Hadayab, and they said no. A sudden death is only kares if the person is under 80 years old. If he's over 80 years old, then it's misas neshika. It's a sign of the being taken from the world by the kiss of God, which is a good thing. Now the Gemara has a statement from Rava. The length of one's life, how many children he has, and how much prosperity he has, that is not dependent on his merit. It's dependent on the mazel, dependent on the flow of hashpah through the mazals from Kadosh Baruch Hu. Many Rishonim discuss how this could be. We say in mazel Yisrael, and of course we know that one's merit are very much involved in how he gets these things. We're promised it through psukim. But the Gemara here does say that it's not dependent on that. And the Gemara says that the proof is from Rabban and Chisda. Rabban and Chisda were tzaddikim on equal level. They both were able to bring rain through their tefillos, but they had a very different life. Rav Chisda lived to be 92 years old. Rabba lived to be only 40 years old. Rav Chisda was very wealthy, such that when they fed fine flour to the dogs of the household, they didn't even eat it because they were used to better food. And Rabba's house, they served barley flour to the people, and there was not even enough because they were so hungry that they ate it all. Now the Gemara says that Rava says that I requested 3 things from Kadosh Baruch Hu. I was given 2 of them. The 3 that I requested were wisdom of Rav Huna, wealth of Rav Chisda, and the humility of Rabba bar Rav Huna. The Maharsha explains he just asked for help achieving that humility. You cannot ask to be granted humility because that's a commandment, that's a mitzvah. So he was given, the Gemara says, the wealth and the wisdom, but he was not given that humility. Now the Gemara quotes a story, a number of stories of interactions with him. Al-Chamavas, the Gemara says that Rava, as he was lying in his bed and he was dying, his brother, whose name was Rav Seorim, came to sit with him, and Rava saw Rav Seorim saw that Rava was slipping away. He was in his final moments, and Rava said to Rav Seorim, tell the Malach HaMavos not to cause me too much pain when he takes my life. So Rav Seorim said, you're friends with the Malach HaMavos, you have a relationship with him, you tell him yourself. So he said, no, once he's already been given the command to take me, once my mazel has been gone over to him, he no longer listens to me, so you take him. So he did agree to tell him, but he said, please come back to me, show yourself to me after you die, and I would like to speak to you. So he did come and he appeared to him after he died. He said, how much pain did you have when you passed from the world? He said, like bloodletting, like the lancet, like the cut that is made by the blood letter. Now the Gemara says that Rava himself was present at the death of Rav Nachman, and a similar story happened. He saw that he was slipping away, and Rav Nachman said to him, tell the Malach HaMavos not to pain me too much. And he said, aren't you an Adam Chashav? You're a respectable, honorable individual. Tell him yourself. He said, before the Malach HaMavos, there is no one who's Chashav, there is no one who's awesome. He's not afraid of anyone, and there's no one who's so upright and upstanding that the Malach HaMavet should listen to him. And again, Rava asked him to appear to him after he died. He did appear to him. He said, how much pain were you put through when you left? And he said it was only like drawing a hair out of milk, meaning almost no pain at all. Now, he did say, though, that had HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me to go back down to this world, I would not want to do that simply because of the fear, the fright from seeing the Malach HaMavet. Is a very frightening incident. Now, the Gemara quotes from Rabbi Elazar, when it was time for him to die, he was eating truma, and he saw the Malach HaMavet approaching. He said, excuse me, I'm eating truma, and that's Kodesh, it cannot become Tameh. If you will kill me now, then I will be Metame the truma, and you're commanded to prevent it from becoming Tameh, just like we all are, and therefore there was a delay, and the time of his death passed, and he was not taken at that time. Now, Rav Sheshes saw the Malach HaMavet approaching him in the marketplace. He said, I don't want to die here in the market. Come to me in my house. Rav Ashi saw the Malach HaMavet approaching him in the market, and he said, give me 30 days. I need to review my learning. I'd like to have it clear so that as it says, Ashim Yishabalakan Metamud Biyadeh, praiseworthy is he who comes here to heaven, and he knows his learning, he has it in his hand. So 30 days later, he did come and appear to him before the day was even over, and Rav Ashi said, what's the rush? Why are you in such a rush? He said, it's the time of Bar Nasan, referring to Huna. Bar Nasan is his time to become the Rosh Hashiva, to become the Nasi, and he cannot become until you depart, because one person's reign does not overlap with another, even by a hair. Now the Gemara says that the Malach HaMavet was unable to get to Rav Chisda because he was busy learning the entire time, so he went and he sat in a cedar tree near Rav Chisda's house, or Rav Chisda's base medrash, and the tree split, made a noise, and that disturbed Rav Chisda, and therefore he was able to get him. Rav Chia, the Malach HaMavet wasn't able to get even near him, and one day he appeared, he dressed up like a poor person, and he came and he knocked on the door. The family opened the door, and he asked for some bread, and he gave him the bread. And he said, you have mercy on a poor person, why don't you have mercy on that person, meaning on that individual, meaning on himself, because he's trying to do the job that he's commanded to take Rav Chia's life, and Rav Chia saw that that's what he's trying to do, so he said, okay. And he revealed to him a staff of flame, and he gave his life over to the Malach HaMavet. Alright, now we get to our Mishnah, last Mishnah in the Daf. So the Mishnah discusses what types of morning activities are permitted on Chol Hamoed, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, and Purim. The Gemara is going to talk about 3 types of mourning. The Mishnah will speak about 3 types of mourning. One is called Ma'anos, one is called Metapchos, and one is called Mekonanos. Now these are done by women. The Mishnah says, the Mefarshim explain men do it as well, but women are more into the morning activities, and therefore we talk about women doing it. Now Ma'anos is when they all sing or they mourn together, they say Hespedim together. Metapchos is when they clap or they slap their leg in sorrow, and Mekonos is when one person speaks and they answer responsively. So Ma'onos is more likely to be permitted, Metapchos is in between, Mekonos is more likely to be aser. The Gemara says, as far as Chol Hamoed, the halacha is that Ma'onos is mutter, Metapchos, clapping is a machlokes. According to Tanakama, it's aser. According to Rabbi Yishmael, it's permitted in front of the mace, close to the mace itself, nowhere else. And Mekonos is aser. And as far as Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, and Purim, there Ma'onos is mutter, just like on Chol Hamoed. Metapchos is mutter. Here there's no machlokes. Everywhere there's no machlokes, and there's no difference between close to the mace or far from the mace. But again, Mekonos is aser. All of them, though, in all situations, it's aser after the burial of the mace itself. That's the last halacha. The Mishnah describes what each of these are, and it gives a pasuk, a source for what Mekonanos is, from where it says V'lameidna benosechem nehi v'ishur usakina. Teach your daughter's mourning, and a woman shall lament to her friend, meaning that it is led responsibly. That's what we know what Mekonanos means. Now the Mishnah ends on a positive note, and it says that in the future, Hashem will erase death forever and erase tears from everyone's face. He'll wipe the tears from everyone's face. And that is the pasuk in Yeshaya. Okay, now the Gemara gives examples of certain hespedim, certain ma'onanos that are said. So the Gemara says that in many places they say Vayla Azla Vayla Chavila. They say woe, oive over the journey, oive over the mashkon. So we are sorry for the one who's leaving, and we're sorry for the fact that he has to return his neshama to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the Gemara quotes Rava, who says 7 ma'anos that are said by the women of a place called Shachantziv. These are very hard to understand. The Mefarshim explain them in a number of different ways, so we'll list the 7. The first one is Vayla Az Vayla Chavila, like we just said, Oy over the journey of the one who's leaving, and Oy over the mashkin he has to give back his soul. Second one is cut the bone from the tooth to bring water to the kettle. Some Rishonim explain that means cut the bone from the tooth means to open the mouth, except instead of water going down into the throat, the water comes out of the throat and goes back to the kettle. That is the neshama returning to Shemayim. The third one is where we say the mountains should cover themselves because he was a great person and an upright, distinct individual. That's a way of telling people to mourn for the one who died. The next one is that they say that the coffin is like a clothing of fine silk to a free person who was run out of food, meaning when somebody becomes poor, then it's better off for him to be dead than to be struggling in this world. This was said in order to have people give money to the causes of bearing the expense of the burial for him, not saying that it's actually better to die. Next, the women of Shachnatzev would say that he runs and he falls and he has to borrow money at the bridge. That's to say somebody who's even had a lot during his lifetime, but at the end he sometimes runs out and he needs to borrow money to pay for the shrouds and the other parts of the burial. Again, this was part of raising funds to help cover the cost of the burial if somebody didn't have it. Next, it says that our brothers and merchants, their homes or their nests will be searched, meaning us ourselves, our good deeds will be searched, and Kadosh Baruch Hu will decide what we're going to get to keep and what we won't. We could find ourselves in a similar situation, and again, they were asking people to donate to the cost of the burial. And the last one is, one death is just like another death, and suffering is like ribus, it's like interest. Everybody's going to die. At some point, they were saying, and some people have to suffer, and that's like an extra payment that you have to make, that they have to make. Okay, now the Gemara speaks about the schar of people who say, Hespedim. Rameir said, a pasuk in Koheles, it's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of parties, and the living should take this to heart. What should they take to heart? Everything to do with the death they should take to heart. Somebody who eulogizes, he himself will be eulogized. Somebody who does kavur, somebody who's involved in the burial, he himself will be buried properly, and one who gets himself involved, he rouses himself, people will rouse themselves for him. Some say that that's meant to maybe understand the opposite. Somebody who rouses himself, that is, he gets too haughty over what he's doing for the dead, then people will not rouse themselves for him. Like it says, Kitov Amar Lacha Alehena, it's better that it should be said to you, come over here. It says there, don't glorify yourself in the presence of the king, don't stand in the palace of the great. It's better that it should be said to you, come here, than that you should be demoted. Meaning to say, don't be about gaiva about what you do, so that you should be zocha to have the same thing at least done for you. Now the Gemara discusses what happened when Rabbi Shmuel lost sons. He had lost one son, he lost the second son right afterwards. And for Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Lazar, Ben Azai, and Rabbi Kiva came to be menachem him. This is referring to the second one after they came the second time, as they came the second time, and what they said. So the Gemara says, before they went in, Rabbi Tarfon said to the other three, he's a great Talmid Chacham and he's an expert in Agada, so you should say all types of Agada. He'll be happy to hear Agada. No one should interrupt anyone else. No one should repeat anything that anyone else said, because he's going to appreciate many types of Agada. Rabbi Kiva said, I'll be the one to go last. No problem, meaning he was not afraid that somebody would say the Tanchumen that he had prepared. Now Rabbi Shmuel, who was the Ovel, he spoke first, and he said, because I have such great sins, referring to himself, he said, because his sins are so great, he has Avelos one after the other, and he's bothered the Chachamim to come first time to be Menachem, and the second time to be Menachem again. Then the Menachemim spoke. Rabbi Tarfon said first, and he said about Nadav and Avihu, it says, Kol Beis Yisrael Yifku Es Esref Hashem Saraf Hashem, all of Klal Yisrael mourned the fire, the burning that Hashem burned and destroyed. Now, Nadav and Avihu was zocha to this great thing, but what did they do? All he did was one mitzvah, Vayakrivu Bnei Aaron and Saddam Elav, and the sons of Aaron brought the blood to him. So for just one mitzvah, they were zocha to this. So the sons of Rabbi Shmuel did many mitzvahs, are certainly zocha to a great honor in their passing. Yosef Glili then spoke, and he said, similar type of structure of Nechama, he said about Avia, the son of Yeravam the Rasha, who created the Malchus Yisrael. His son Avia was zoche to all of Yisrael being menachem. It says, "V'safdei kol Yisrael v'kover oisei." They all set a spade in for him, and they buried him. What was he zocha to that? For one mitzvah that he did. The Gemara explains what was the mitzvah. The mitzvah was either Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Papa give different opinions. Either was that he went to be Ola Regel. Yeravam had blocked people from going to Yerushalayim to be Ola Regel. When he created Malchus Yisrael, he split off from the kingdom of Yehuda, and the Beis Hamikdash was in Malchus Yehuda. They didn't want people going there, so he blocked people from being Ola Regel, set up an Avodah Zarah, and he put guards along the road to stop people from going. So either Avia, his son, went, or he took off the guards, he took away the guards so that other people would be able to go. Either way, he did one mitzvah, and he was zocher to this great hesped, and therefore the sons of Rabbi Shmuel should certainly be zocher to even greater things. The pasuk that shows that Avi did one thing is, like it says, Yan nimtzabo davar tov. He had one good thing that was found in him. Now, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah then spoke, and he said, referring to Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, it says about him, B'shalom Tammuz, Uvemisrifos avosecha mocham harishonim ashayu lefanecha kein yisrifu lecha. You'll die peacefully, like the burning performed for your forefathers. Earlier kings were before you. They will burn for you, and they will lament. They will say aspedim and say oi for our master. So about Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, what did he do? He did one good thing. The one good thing that he did was that he saved Yirmiyahu from the mud. Yirmiyahu had been thrown into a pit and left to die there because of his prophecies that the other kings were upset about. Tzidkiyahu saved him and he pulled him out. In that merit, he had this special peaceful passing and hesped, and therefore the children of Rabbi Shmuel, who had many more mitzvahs, certainly would be zacha to much more honor. Now the fourth one, this is Rabbi Kiva. He said we're going to learn it from something that happens in the times of, it's a pasuk referring to the times of Mashiach, and specifically it's referring to Achav, the king Achav, who was a Rasha. The pasuk that's referred to is in Zechariah. The pasuk says, "Bayem Mahu Yigdal Mispid Yerushalayim Ki Mispad Hadad Rimon Bebikas Megidon." On that day will be great mourning in Yerushalayim, like the morning of the passing of Hadad Rimon in the valley of Megidon. Now, what does that pasuk mean? So the Gemara says, Rav Yosef said, we would not understand that if not for Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, who explained it as follows. On that day, the day of, which is either the passing of Mashiach ben Yosef, or it's referring to the passing of the Yetzer Hara, the destruction of the Yetzer Hara, and it's linking it to the mourning over the son over Achav ben Omri, who was killed by Hadad Rimon ben Tavrimon. Now Hadad Achav was a Rasha. He was killed in a war against Aram. He was killed by a Arami soldier named Hadad Rimon ben Tavrimon. That's what's referred to by Hadad Rimon. And then when it says Vikas Megidon, that's referring to the passing of Yoshiyahu HaMelech, who was killed by Paro Necho. Paro Necho is called Paro Chigra. Necho is from the word Nacheh, meaning lame. In English, he's called Pharaoh Nicho, but he's called here Paro Chagira, the lame Pharaoh, and he led his men in battle against Yoshiyahu, and Yoshiyahu was killed in the valley of Megiddo, and that's what's being referred to. So we have two mournings, that of Achav and that of Yoshiyahu, and they were zocha to a tremendous hesped. So Rabbi Kiva says, why was Achav zocha to a tremendous hesped, tremendous mourning? It was because he did one good thing, that when he was shot, he still stood up in his chariot so that the soldiers would not think that he was killed, and in that merit he prevented them from fleeing, and they could have been slaughtered had they all ran away. Now, of course, Rabbi Shmuel's sons again did many more than one good thing, and therefore they get much greater zechasim. Now the Gemara asks, hold on a second. We said before that Tzidkiyahu died peacefully. Tzidkiyahu had his eyes put out by Nebuchadnezzar. So how is that he died peacefully? The Gemara says because Nebuchadnezzar died before him. That was the peace that he had. Now, similarly, the Gemara asks that Rava said to Rabbi Bar Mari, how is it that Yoshiyahu died peacefully? He didn't die peacefully. He was shot with 300 arrows until they pierced him like a sieve. The Gemara says, no, what it means to say is that he died before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. He did not have to see the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed in his lifetime.